What's happening, everybody? Grand Prix GTP02 here, kicking it back once again up here at Humble Hyundai here in the north end of Houston, Texas. And behind me is an example of what happens when one of America's biggest car companies takes its European-styled, economy-minded 5-door hatchback and injects it with a whopping dose of turbocharged performance. Welcome to the Ford Fiesta ST. Alrighty, so the Ford Fiesta ST. Well, as I'm sure many of my subscribers know, especially a lot of you Europeans out there, you guys know that the Ford Fiesta in general was never meant to be any kind of a hot hatchback or high-performance automobile. Instead, the Fiesta in general, even in its most loaded-out titanium trim level, was always set to be a budget-friendly, subcompact economy car. However, the example that you see in front of you is pretty much what happens when some of Ford Motor Company's younger gearheads get together and say, well, we created a successful mid-size hatchback, if you can call it that, the Ford Focus ST, and that's doing pretty well for itself over the years. So what happens if we took that same sort of philosophy and broke it down to a little bit of a smaller scale? Hence, the Fiesta ST was born. Now, the particular example that I'm showing you guys today is a relatively basic Fiesta ST. This 2015 model, dressed in tuxedo black metallic, is a rapid spec 400A example. Now, what that means is basically every option that you see on this car before you is standard. Everything from the Rado Gray 5-spoke painted alloy wheels to the Sony 8-speaker premium audio system, the 2-tone cloth upholstered interior, and so on is all standard. However, this car is missing one big thing, if you want to call it fully loaded, and that is the ST Recaro package, which rolls in things such as the aptly named Recaro seats. It throws in navigation, it throws in a power sunroof, it throws in all the really big extra toys that a lot of people would want if they want to consider this a fully loaded hatchback. Now, being the fact that the ST is the hottest of the Fiesta lineup, it certainly has to look the part. So, of course, Ford did a few exterior upgrades to make this car look a little bit better. Now, for starters, you don't get any kind of projector headlights at all. It's not even an option. This one has just the standard halogen lights, no big deal there. You do have fog lights down below, and then, of course, you have this aggressive front fascia with a grille that is very reminiscent to that of the Focus ST. And then, of course, you have that wonderful red ST badge to let you know that this car is indeed something special. Now, being the fact that this is a subcompact car, it definitely is nothing huge to look at. I mean, of course, it looks very aggressive, but with a wheelbase of only 98 inches long even and a height of only about 4.5 to 5 feet tall, this car is indeed quite small. Now, from the outside, I do like the Fiesta ST, especially here at the back. You've got that huge rear wing that sticks out with the inlets here, and this does aid, I believe, in aerodynamics, reducing drag, and not so much having this crazy whale tail kind of spoiler, but you've got these weird holes and crevices and everything like that to help this car aid in aerodynamics. Now, looking at it from the back, again, that rounded rear hatch, it really looks the part, and especially down here as well, you've got this sort of painted diffuser area down here. It only comes with a single outlet exhaust with twin tips, and it does actually make a pretty decent noise, but then it would, because this car, like a lot of Ford's other new performance vehicles nowadays, has a sound symposer technology system, which basically means that there is a sort of system underneath the car that as you accelerate, it amplifies the sound inside the interior to make the car sound even beefier than it actually is. Now, a few other options that are standard on this particular example are the turn signal mirrors and also Ford's intelligent access system, which comes with a rather pocket-sized key fob and also the push-button ignition on the dashboard. Now really overall, the Fiesta ST is still a pretty bargain-worthy package. In 2015, like this particular example is, it started at about $20,650 for the ST. Then again, you throw in all the options, you're probably looking at about $21,000 to $22,000 if you were to throw in all the upgrades, maybe even more, considering the fact that you do have a lot of options you can throw at this. Now, one last final note here on the exterior are these wheels. Like I said, these in 2015, this color was optional, but the wheel style was standard. These are the optional Rado Gray 17-inch painted aluminum alloy wheels with the red brake calipers that also do come with the optional gray wheels. Now, you've got four-wheel disc brakes all the way around, but the suspension setup is a bit of a weird one because you have a McPherson strut and multi-link suspension up front. However, in the rear, you have a torsion beam rear suspension instead. So if you actually were to put this car up in the air and look underneath, it's basically a giant metal bar that connects this left rear wheel with the right rear wheel, which is a little bit weird, but then again, this car is meant to handle like a go-kart, and having driven this particular car already, this thing is an absolute riot to drive. Keeping in mind also, it only weighs 2,742 pounds curb weight, and that's without the driver. So being the fact it's lightweight, it's front wheel drive, it's got a good bit of horsepower as you'll hear later, and it looks the way it does, it is definitely meant to be that youthful spark that Ford wanted for their performance line. Now, as good as it looks on the outside, there are plenty of things to talk about the interior, so that's where we're headed next. Now, once you open the door and are finally greeted by the interior of the Fiesta ST, unfortunately, this thing suffers with the same kind of issues that all of the others do, even though this is the hottest and one of the most expensive models in the lineup. And it really all has to do with the aesthetics of the interior. Yes, the seats are plenty plush, and these are the standard Fiesta ST seats. These are dressed in charcoal black with the standard cloth upholstery. You can get these colored. You can get either molted orange or the smoke storm gray as color inserts here for the inner parts of the seats. And like I said, since this one is missing the Recaro package, you have the option to upgrade to the aggressively bolstered Recaro bucket seats, also trimmed in the same kind of pattern. Now, back to the aesthetics. Unfortunately, this car is a little bit on the plasticky side. You'd think with this even being a remotely hot hatchback, even for its size, you think that this car would have a little bit more in terms of premium materials in certain key places. You do have a padded armrest here on all the doors, so that is nice that Ford gives you that, but again, a little bit more on the plasticky side, and it's just not my cup of tea. Anyways, but that's just me. Now, you do have power mirrors, you have your power windows, you do have an automatic up-down for the driver's window, which is nice to have. You have window locks along with automatic safety locks, but your door locks actually get located to the My Ford Touch control station in the center stack, which is a little bit on the odd side. Now, despite the initial impressions that many people may have when looking at this car from the outside, once you actually sit inside the interior of the Fiesta ST, or really any of the 2015 and up Fiestas for that matter, you'll notice that this car will surprise you a little bit. For starters, Ford actually did raise the headliner here, so you do have this nice curved portion here. So even someone like myself, about 6'1", I can fit in this car absolutely no problem. I have plenty of headroom, and the same can actually be said in the back. Sadly, the same can't be said with the legroom, but you'll find that out here in just a bit. Now, the seats themselves are actually quite nice. They are a bit on the firm side, but then again, they are the standard cloth seats, and they don't have as aggressive of support, like I said before, as the optional Recaros. Now, for starters, it is blistering hot in this car, not only because it's sunny outside, but because it is over 100 degrees here in the Houston area already. So that does mean we're going to start it and introduce some AC so we can remain comfortable throughout our interior portion here. So here's the key to the car. It's pretty pocket-sized. You guys saw it before. Now, it does have a small kind of an external key blade, if you will, and it's hidden behind the Ford logo here. You just squeeze the tab at the bottom, this back pops off, and you have a little key blade hidden behind. Other than that, it's just your standard keyless access fob. Now, the Fiesta ST, like the Focus ST, only comes with the 6-speed manual. So that does mean to start it, you put your foot on one of the aluminum sport pedals, which are also standard, that one being the clutch, push it down, and as long as the vehicle's in neutral, key fob's in the vehicle anywhere, just hit the button on the dash, and now the startup of the Fiesta ST is rather on the smooth side because that engine is only 1.6 liters in size, and it's not the same 1.6 that you'll find in the standard Fiesta. Alright, so we've got this ST cranked up, we've got the air conditioning running, and we're nice and comfortable. It's now time to talk about the rest of this car's interior, and I'm actually delighted to say that there are quite a few things that I do like about this car, especially when compared to some of the other more basic Fiestas that I've driven in situations such as when I had one as a rental car. Now, for starters, directly in front of you, the steering wheel is absolutely huge for a car of this size. Me in particular, I don't know why, I just think it's a little too large for this small of a car, rather. It does have a leather trim outside, so that is nice to have. You do have perforations at 9 and 3, and even all the way up to the 10 and 2 positions where you have these rather nice grip extensions as well. You do have a polished silver piece here in the middle, so that does add a nice little bit of bling to the interior. And then, of course, you have your typical suspects on each side of the wheel. You do have your hands-free radio and Bluetooth combination here on the left-hand side of the wheel with your voice command function in the center, and then of course you also have your cruise control functions over here on the right. Now, specific to the ST only are the red needled gauges. If you were to get into a standard one, they would just be blue and it would look a little bit more on the plain side. But as for the gauge cluster, it's pretty simple to see. You do have your odometer, your temperature gauge, and also your average miles per gallon and so on in the middle, and yes, that is real-time temperature, folks. I am going to the extreme with this review here, and I'm not just talking about the car. You do have your fuel gauge down there in the middle, and then of course your large tachometer and speedometer on either side. Now, one thing that is a little bit of a weird thing is with the location of the push button start. I mean, yes, they did cram a lot between the center console and the driving position, but I would have preferred maybe the button to be maybe about here, not having to reach around trying to fiddle between your intermittently timed wiper stalk and the air conditioning vent and everything to find the push button start. So that is just a little bit weird for me. Now, this car does have automatic headlights as well. You do have the fog lights, as I said before, and you also have the instrument dimming function. Now, that is not just one lighting aspect of this car. Down here in the center console, you do also have Ford's ambient lighting system, as noted by this little button here. You do have lights in the center consoles that shift, I think, between about 8 or 9 different colors. I know you have your standard red, blue, white, yellow, you have like an aqua color, you have all these different cool color combinations, and also the lights will show up under the dash. So that is a really nice little youthful feature, kind of a hark back to the days of, like, I don't know, like the Fast and the Furious kind of days. But anyways, as far as everything else, one of the things that I did want to mention is for a subcompact hatchback, the entry into this car is on the decent side. I mean, again, I'm 6'1", 175 pounds, and I had no problem getting into this car, at least just upon initial entry. Once you sit down, though, being the fact I do have longer legs, the large size of the steering wheel does tend to get in the way. My knees kind of have a tendency, once I'm up off the clutch and up off the brake pedal and whatnot, they do have a tendency to want to sort of raise up and hit the back of the steering wheel, so that is a little bit of a hindrance. You do, however, have the adjustable tilt and telescope function as well. So as you can see, it goes all the way out. You can go up and down as normal, so I would usually have it in the highest setting available and all the way down and back. Maybe a little forward, I don't know. Anyways, again, as far as initial entry is concerned, it's not too bad, but then we move to the center console here. Now, this 2015 model does not have Ford's new Sync 3. Now, I've not messed with that yet, so I can't give you any details on that. What I can tell you about is this particular car has a 6.5-inch touchscreen display at the top of the dash. Now, to me, this is a little on the small side. It's just too tiny. I mean, if you're gonna put a nav system or anything up at the top of the dash, even if it's in a subcompact car, just make it a little bit wider. That would just be a little bit better. Now, it is touchscreen though, so you do have like your phone functions. This one does not come with nav, as I said before. It does have a compass, but it's not anything super crazy. Well, it does have the map, so that's actually nice to have. So technically, this one does have navigation. My apologies for that. I stand corrected. But anyways, you also have the entertainment function, the climate or the settings function, and also your Bluetooth, as I mentioned before. Now, like I said, this car has the 8-speaker Sony premium audio system as standard on the ST. Now, once you push the power button, this thing does have a pretty significant sound to it. So we'll just tune to a nice little radio station here.
This is that dope in my car with this non-smoke look, a beat that not so rapid. Hit the record store, never let me go. Get my whole collection, yeah. I got mine, I hope you got mine.
Now, one thing that I do actually like about certain parts of this My Ford Touch interface is the fact that it's not all touchscreen like it used to be when I first experienced My Ford Touch back in 2011. You actually do have buttons here, which is nice to have. Even here in the center, you do have the little knob for your volume. You actually have buttons for your radio source and your sound function, so turn up the bass, the treble, the mid-range, and all that good stuff. However, it does feel a little funny having a power button as a separate entity rather than if you have a button in the center, you actually would push that in order to turn the radio on and off. Other than that, like I said, your door locks got moved to the center stack here in this My Ford Touch control station, and you also have your hazard switch as well. Now, as far as the climate controls, being the fact that this is such a small car, it doesn't really need a huge air conditioning system to push all the air around inside of it. So you do have single zone controls. You have your fan speed over here on the left with automatic AC, all of your climate zones and air conditioning recycling in the middle with a nice tiny little LCD display here that also displays the interior temperature, which the temperature is also controlled by this little knob over here on the right, and that also has a button for introducing the AC as well. Now, as far as everything else, like I said, I've already showed you the ambient lighting system, but it also does have the electronic stability control, so that is a kind of a torture button. I mean, you want to turn it off and you want to have a little bit of fun, maybe put this car in the tripod mode, as Jeremy Clarkson would call it, but ESC, it is definitely a nice little safety feature to have. Now, like I said before, this car only comes as a manual, and the gear throws are a little bit on the long side for a car like this, but then again, a sub $25,000 car. If you were to have a short throw shift kit, perhaps from the aftermarket scene, I think that would tighten it up just a nice little bit. Now, even though this car does have nav, as I stand corrected again and showed you before, it does not have a rear view camera. So the car is in reverse right now, but if you look at the screen, it's still the same My Ford Touch controls as before. So that is a little bit of a letdown that you have navigation, but you don't have the rear view camera, which would be nice. Now, like I said, this car does have Microsoft Sync, however, so you do have the USB functions and everything as well, and those are hidden down there in this little bitty center console. The center console, you could probably stack a phone or maybe set a drink of some kind in there. Like I said, I've done it before, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. That's what these two cup holders are here for. Anyway, as far as everything else, e-brake, it's the same old stuff. And then, of course, on the dash, you do have a padded kind of rubberized material up here, so that is nice to have. It's a great departure from the plastics on the door. I just wish they could have transferred some of this to over here. That's about my only big gripe as far as the majority of the interior, but as far as everything else, as far as options as standard and everything else, the Fiesta ST certainly does pack a whole lot for the money. Now, should you find yourself headed for the back seat of this ST, you better be prepared for a bit of a squeeze. I have that driver's seat right there in the exact spot where I would have it as a driver, and slipping into the back here, I don't think my driver would be very comfortable. My knees are right in his or her back. I mean, you can even see the seat cushion moving as my knees are pressed into the back of the seat, and it really does help, however, that the back of the seats are indented and curved. That is a nice little function. You do have map pockets down in the back of each of the seats, and these seats are 60-40 split fold. Unfortunately, there is no center console here or any kind of cup holder that folds out of the seat. Instead, you just have a single cup holder down there in the floor. Now, really being in the back seat and being in this cramped little environment is not a surprise. Again, I'll reiterate, this car is a subcompact, and you only are looking at 95.2 cubic feet of total interior volume. That's front seats, back seats, and cargo room as well, which there's not a whole lot of that either. But anyways, what do you expect from a subcompact car? It's meant to be a driver's car. I don't know that I would use this car to haul around my friends unless I really didn't like them that much. Now, as for the rear cargo compartment of the Fiesta, and really this applies not just to the ST, but pretty much all of them as far as the hatchbacks are concerned, this car really is not the most accommodable thing in the world. Lifting up this parcel shelf here and actually looking into this rather deep rear compartment, you're only looking at 10.1 cubic feet of cargo volume to start. Now that of course can be extended with the folding down of the rear seats, again 60-40 split fold, so that does help just a little bit. But as far as initial cargo volume, you're not going to be stuffing a whole lot of large items back here. Maybe a few bags, a suitcase or two, and also, as you may be able to see underneath, you do also have a rear spare tire as well. So that's good that Ford at least gives you that in a sub $25,000 hot hatch. Now, of course, a little hatchback like this would not be hot without a good bit of oomph under the hood, and the Fiesta ST definitely delivers, especially considering the size of the car. Opening the hood here reveals Ford's 1.6-liter turbocharged and direct fuel injected 4-cylinder engine that's been made specifically for the Fiesta ST. It also features double overhead cams, 16 valves, and Ford's twin independent variable cam timing. Now this engine, unlike the 110 horsepower or so made by the naturally aspirated 1.6-liter engine that you find in the normal Fiesta, this engine makes 197 horsepower and 202 pound-feet of torque. Now again, with a weight around 2,740 pounds, this car is good for a 0 to 60 sprint of about 6 to 6.5 seconds. Now just because this is a hot hatch doesn't mean that this car can't be good on fuel, ranging from 26 miles per gallon in the city to 35 miles per gallon on the interstate highway, running on the recommended premium unleaded fuels. So despite the fact that this car is on the tiny side, it still packs a whopper of an engine and a hell of a power to weight ratio. Now, as people have said before, with great power comes great responsibility. And as far as the safety features of the Fiesta ST are concerned, it's not the most noteworthy car in terms of its crash test ratings, especially when it comes to the normal Fiesta. However, there are a few safety amenities to keep you in check. For starters, sitting down in the passenger side here, again, you have the multi-point seat belts, all that standard garb, but you also do have your front impact airbags. You also have side impact airbags as noted by the logo up here, and also something on the side of the seat as well. So at least 6 airbags to keep you in check inside the interior. Now, shutting the door and sitting down in the passenger side of this car, again, I really don't have much room down there for my legs, and the dash is again the same kind of plastic as the door panels, so that does kind of worry me. Now, as far as the glove box itself, it is kind of small. There's not really much to look at in there other than the books for this vehicle. But again, this is a hot hatchback and it's a subcompact car, so again, for the price range, I'm not expecting anything drastic. And ladies and gentlemen, on that note, unfortunately our time here with the Ford Fiesta ST has now officially drawn to a close. A big thanks once again to Humble Hyundai for allowing us access to their used car inventory once again to bring you Ford's hot subcompact hatchback. Now, if you guys want to find out any more information about this particular vehicle, head on over to www.humblehyundai.com, or if you want to customize your own brand new Fiesta ST, head on over to Ford's website, simply at www.ford.com. Well, again, guys, this has been Grand Prix GTP 02, signing out until next time.